and wondered, who are we here? Who are we? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing to make sense of things? God talks to us, and Christianity is the largest expression of religion in the world, but it is not the majority. It is maybe 28%. I want to say Hinduism's maybe, excuse me, Islam's maybe 24%. Hinduism is certainly there at maybe 15 or 16%. But then it goes from there. And we have Buddhism, maybe 6%, and we have a lot of different ways in which people are trying to make sense of the world. And so thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then if you've prepared remarks for us, to go for it.
Okay. You asked me to speak about Hinduism, and my normal style is let me think about it, and I didn't do that. So yeah, I said yes, and now I have to have a disclaimer. Very little about myself, but here it is anyway. The disclaimer being that the doctor before my name is for an MD, not for a doctorate in theology, and I am no authority on Hinduism. On the other hand, I was born and largely educated in India. And if you're born on Indian soil, Hinduism just permeates into your being as it's present in the earth, water, air, land, everywhere. Whether you come from a home where they practice Hinduism or not, your neighbor certainly does. And the socializing in India with 1.2 billion people is quite a phenomenon anyway. So everyone gets this part of Hinduism simply by being there. I will do my best to share my understanding of this very ancient religion in 30 minutes or so. I was also inspired by my late husband Sam's grandfather, who used to say, in order to believe in anything, you must read at least 5 religions and then accept your own. So I think in the interest of study, this is good. It's good to know what else people believe in the world. Hinduism is, as Father Chris said, considered the 3rd largest religion in the world today, behind Christianity and Islam. 1.2 billion people call themselves Hindus. Interestingly, most of these Hindus actually live in India, in Southeast Asia, in Nepal, Myanmar, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, all countries that are in a small region. And there's reasons for this. One being that India has never invaded another country for land or religion for 6,000 years. And the other is that in the Indian philosophy, there is a great tolerance and acceptance and a belief that all religions are good. And so there is no conversion ceremony. The missionaries from other lands have come into India and converted Hindus to Christianity or Islam, but there's no conversion in Hinduism. So you can be a Hindu, you can adopt the philosophy, but there is no formal conversion. So it didn't leave the continent or the subcontinent like other religions. But of course, it also saved us from warring other countries for space or religion. So the other very interesting thing is neither Hindu nor Hinduism nor religion are inherent to Hinduism. All of this has come from outside. Indian history, as documented, is like at least 4,000 years old. However, the Mohenjo-daro city that was dug up is 6,000 years old. So it's much is highly developed and prehistoric and was not called Hindu then, and the word religion wasn't used either. The Zoroastrians that came from Persia or Middle Asia came into India from North India, from the northern side, and the river Indus that divides the Asian land from India, somehow Indus turned into Hindus, and Hindus turned into Hindu. And they began to say people on the other side of this river Indus, the river Hindus, were Hindus. And from Hindu came the word Hinduism. So it wasn't named by the people in India. Then the British came in with their own scholarship and their own religious beliefs. And they interpreted the Hindu way of life as a religion. Now, in theory, Hinduism doesn't fit any definition of religion because there is no single prophet. There is no single book like the Bible or the Quran. There is no dogma, and there is no single institution like the Roman Catholic Church. So we use the word religion, but really the definition doesn't quite fit.
What is the book, the Bhagavad Gita? How does that fit in?
The Bhagavad Gita, so there are scriptures, but there is not a single book. The Bhagavad Gita is within the Mahabharata, which is an epic from 3000 BC. And it does have Krishna's word to Arjuna, which is a phenomenal piece of work on every aspect of how you may live and pray. But it's only a tiny piece. It's a very small piece of all the scripture that's available. But there is not a single book that says, read this book for Hinduism. That doesn't exist. Originally in India, and even today, instead of the word religion, the word used is Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, and Dharma means code of living. So the original word, they say, came from the rishis, which are the seers, the people who lived in the mountains and by the rivers and in the forests, from observation and meditation. As you said, Father Chris, there is diversity, and they're looking at these seers are in the forests and in nature and looking at it. And their thought was, there is so much order in nature. Everything has a law, and these laws just simply remain unbroken. So their meditation became that if there is so much law and order and so many rules that never get broken in nature, then there must be a rule maker. There must be someone who asked nature to be this way. And in the essence of this meditation is where the Indian philosophy begins. And the essence of this meditation was that there is a rule maker, a creator that they call Brahma. That's the single God. And Brahma was not only the creator, but Brahma was creation. So that gets interpreted as there is a supreme spirit, and it pervades everything, animate and inanimate. So God is everywhere and in everything. And there is a whole scripture called Advaita, that means non-duality, that there is nothing but the spirit of God. All else is illusion. So that is the essence. And in the human, the supreme spirit is the soul, the Atma, but this supreme spirit is actually present in everything. And the goal of the Sanatan Dharma then is for humans to come to full consciousness that the soul within them and the supreme spirit Brahma are one. And if you can attain that consciousness, then you will have liberation from all the trials and tributes of this. So, and this is not something that has come from intellectual activity or from reading. This was their meditation, and this is the eternal word. They say prehistoric, before we started reading and writing. And the original word, they say, was simply received from meditation and was spoken in rhyme for many generations. So whatever they learned in meditation was handed down from generation to generation. And it was written in rhyme for ease of transfer. And this went on for many centuries. And finally, somewhere in 580, was written in what we call the Vedas. In addition to the Vedas, of course, there are, like you brought up, the Upanishads, Puranas, epics. So there is a huge volume of stuff that got written afterwards. It's all written in Sanskrit, and over the years has been translated into English and local languages, and German, and so on. So everyone has a piece of it. And the epics, which is Ramayana and Mahabharata. Mahabharata has the Bhagavad Gita, which has become the most popular, well-known piece of all this Hindu philosophy, but it's not all of it. The original Vedas really are the oldest religious writings in the world. And they are written, it's a code of life, really, and it comes in many sections. There is the moral code that asks for honesty, ahimsa, which is nonviolence, forbearance, self-restraint, and compassion, and goes into great length how to live with all of these every day. There are codes for artha, they say, which is work, on how to work properly, honestly, to the benefit of yourself and those around you. There is a calm yoga, which describes that there are desires and passions, and it's okay to enjoy them. God is with you, and none of this is forbidden, provided you follow the proper code, the dharma, which is yours to do. And the ultimate goal of everything is to attain, to become conscious of the soul within you and the Supreme Spirit being one, and then you have freedom and liberty from work and desires. So in today's culture, and being that all this is like 4,000 plus years old, of course, we're not all well versed with it. People read what they can, they hear what they can, and so on. And the other difficulty with Hinduism, 1.2 billion people, and Hinduism has no dogma, and it encourages questioning for deeper understanding. So you can just imagine 1.2 billion people with their own opinions and encouraged to ask questions. So of course there is great knowledge, but there is great confusion. But day to day, the Hindus do have daily prayer. They pray, you can pray at the temple or at home. Many Hindu homes will have a little temple inside the house. So it's a space, a room, where they may have a deity, or they may just have space, and they start the day with prayer, with a bath, prayer, and then they start their work. This is the normal Hindu practice for most homes. There are deities, and to the outside world, to the Western world, it's all translated to Hinduism has many gods. But in the Sanatan Dharma, there is only one God, that's Brahma, that pervades everything. And the deities are all vehicles to this one God, Brahma. And so you pray only to one God, and these deities are all not considered to be separate gods. The other thing that, and in order to pray, the methods of prayer involve yoga, which, as we all know today, is become quite popular all over the world.
Yeah.
And the yoga is practiced. So the word yoga itself means union, and it is union of the body, mind, and soul, and ultimately the union of the soul within you with the Supreme. And the other definition used for yoga is restraint of the agitation of thought. We need to stop for a minute and think about that. Unless the mind is calm, unless this agitation of thought stops, no further progress can be made. So there are not one yoga. The one we practice here in the West has sort of translated. It's called Hatha Yoga, and it's simply concentrating on breathing to silence the mind. And then the exercises, which in the old world are to get the neuromuscular system aligned, so you don't have aches and pains, and so you can stop the agitation in your body and move on to your mind. But this is just the first yoga. This is the first thing you have to do before you move on to the real thing. And the West hasn't caught up with us. Some have, but not much. So the yoga then allows people, we're all different, as you said initially, There is so much diversity. So not everyone can even pray in the same way. So there are many yogas. There's Bhakti Yoga where you do the initial Hatha Yoga and then you pray, if you know how. If you don't know how, there's Karma Yoga where people who work, their work is their prayer. So if you follow your dharma and you get this work perfectly, honestly, with nonviolence, then that yoga will also allow you to turn that into a prayer. There's Rajas Yoga where you do the Hatha Yoga and then you meditate. And then lastly, there's Jnana Yoga for the scholars amongst us, where if knowledge and wisdom concentrated with no agitation of mind is also a form of prayer. So there's many ways the yoga, which brings about union, many ways to pray into it. And if you attain the state of meditation through any means, by prayer, by work, by meditation, by scholarly work, that's all your form of prayer. The thing that gets much attention in the West is this caste system, which I don't even want to talk about, but I will say just one word, that a very long time ago in the oldest scripture, what the caste system said was live according to your dharma and your guna. The word guna means talent. So whatever God's given you, live according to the talent given to you with the right code of living, which is the Sanatan Dharma gave you. So it wasn't a caste system. It was like, if you are a scholar, be a scholar. If you are a warrior, be a Khatri, be a warrior, and that's your talent. And if you are in the service industry, that's the lowest rung, then be that to the best of your ability. The caste system wasn't there, that you couldn't move from one to the other, was not there. It wasn't family related, it was personal talent related. And it's in some ways it makes a lot of sense, because if you're not intellectually gifted, there's no point in saying you can be a Brahmin, because that talent wasn't given to you. So whatever caste you're in is okay. Also, it wasn't given from one generation to the other. In around 380, somehow another document, another scripture got written, and these things got a little bit more defined. And by the time social changes, and certainly by the time the British arrived in India, the colonial influences, this caste system has acquired a life of its own. And now it's become a hierarchy where the rich are on top and the poor are on the bottom, and so on. And it seems like many other things in India, the whole culture is 6,000 years old, but something's been going on for 2,000 or 3,000 years. It is just hard to prove. And the original writing has somehow, which was actually very sensible, somehow lost and somehow cannot be retrieved at this time. And lastly, I will just say a couple of things, that the Persians, the British, the Islamic influences all came into India. India was the culture there, however, was 6,000 years old, deeply and widely rooted, and also had in it this tolerance and acceptance. I personally don't even like the word tolerance. It had acceptance. Tolerance implies, well, I'm better, but I'll tolerate you. Acceptance implies that we're all okay, you're all okay, and we're okay. So the word's gift to the Hinduism's gift to the world is this philosophy of acceptance, that it's all these religions are okay. They were not. I have been to a temple in India where the Hindu temple is in front and the Christian church is in the back of the same building. So if the Christians came in, you want to pray here, you can have this. So this acceptance has been in the culture for a very long time. But Hinduism, as I said, didn't leave the country because it just didn't. Only in the last 2 centuries, prominent Hindus, Vivekananda came here in 1926 and gave a very remarkable speech in Chicago at the World Parliament of Religion in Chicago. He actually had arrived here, and then they realized that he had no like me, no degree in theology, no school of theology, and they almost didn't let him in. However, someone in Boston had heard him speak and somehow got him in, and he spoke at that. And our second president, Sir Pali Radhakrishnan, was a extremely educated man and had read the Vedas, and he prior to Indian independence, many of these scholars studied in India and at Oxford. So he took much of his thinking and wrote books on the Hindu view of life, and at Oxford in 1926. So some of this, India did take its thought out without warring or invading. And of course, when Mahatma Gandhi led the nonviolent movement in 1947 for India's independence, that the ahimsa from the term, the nonviolence, which is in the eternal code, was at its best, and the world could see it. And many of our leaders from America also went to see him and read everything. And as we all know, Martin Luther King adopted that nonviolence from there. I will, I don't know if I'm going on too long, but Vivekananda, when he spoke in 1893 at the World Parliament of Religion, came in his saffron robes, a brown man, and he started by saying, "My dear brothers and sisters," to this all-white audience. There was silence for a moment. They were a bit shook up, and they stood up and they gave him a standing ovation for 10 minutes before he had even started speaking, because it was a concept that we are all one. And the central message of his philosophy then was, he said, the divine exists in all beings, that all human beings can achieve unity with this innate divinity. That seeing this divine as the essence of others will further love and harmony. So let me read this again. He said, the divine exists in all beings, that all human beings can achieve unity with this innate divinity. And that seeing this divine as the essence of others will further love and harmony. So if we can get our arms around this, that the divine within you is the divine within me, the rest follows, the nonviolence, the love, the harmony simply follows, regardless of what it is, what religion or what path you're taking to get wherever you're going. And all Hindu conversation ends with Om, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om is the word for Brahma, and they say Shanti 3 times for peace of the Lord, peace within you, and peace in the environment. So I will stop. If anyone has any questions, I will be happy to chit chat for a few minutes.
We want to give you a 10-minute standing ovation.
Yeah, really.
Not at all. As I said, I am fully unqualified, but since you asked.
There you go. I do have a couple of questions. I'm sure others do. So let me ask other people first, because I tend to dominate conversations. Any of you have a question right off the bat?
Chandra, it's Judy. Can you talk a little bit about the Hindu view of death and an afterlife?
Yes, everything, given the length of Hinduism, everything is complicated. Huh? There's no simple answers. But here's the general understanding is that there is unity. There is only one spirit, right? Brahma and the soul within us, and the presence of God in everything, animate and inanimate. So your goal is to reach full consciousness that the soul within you is a piece of this Brahma, of the Supreme Spirit. And you live your life by the code, and you spend some time, which we don't, becoming fully conscious of this. If you become fully conscious of this, you will merge with the Supreme Spirit, and there is no hereafter, because you're now part of this universal spirit. if you fail to reach this consciousness, then the peace of the Supreme Spirit, the soul that's within you, will return in some form, another in a back. And I don't dwell on it this much, and I don't clearly know. I mean, word of mouth says you'll come as something else, but probably return as human, and you go through the same cycle again and live it correctly until you reach the salvation. The salvation is that there is no more return. You have now merged with the Supreme, and you are free from the cycle of life and death.
Thank you. Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? I want to ask about the cows. What's going on with the cows?
Yes, the cows. You know, as I said, the original, the Sanatan term is really, the essence of it is difficult, but quite simple. The rest of this that happened, if you just even, it's mind-boggling to even go back 6,000. I mean, we can't really go back 6,000 in our heads even. So along the way, now in the Hindu texts, very little is forbidden. I mean, the country is vegetarian, and that comes from this piece of ahimsa, non-violence. So if you believe God pervades everything, then all killing is not okay. On the other hand, the law of nature says that you kill enough to eat, as all animals do. So this ahimsa also has to be read like it's okay to keep yourself fed and alive, because that's God's plan for you. So the cow, for centuries, they didn't kill the animals, but they did use the milk and butter and so on. So it was valuable for sustenance, not valuable for worshiping. It was just take care of these animals, for they are serving you, and be nonviolent, be as kind as you can, and so on and so forth. And then as all these sects developed, it turned into what it is today. The cow is sacred, so if you kill the cow, you're a bad person. And when the Muslims came into India, and the English, I suppose, everybody else in the world eats cows. So then it turned into like, do not touch the cow because it's sacred. Well, that's not what the original practice was, not because it was sacred, because it was sustenance for the people. If you need the milk, please don't kill the cow. It was kind of simple like that. But then it turned into a sectarian issue. And when the Muslims came, it just kind of escalated, because they did eat all animals. Maybe they didn't eat the hogs, but they ate the cow, and then that caused division. So even though I say there is great acceptance, that's not to say that they're all saints and they don't fight. They do. They are reminded every day to be nonviolent. But
right. Explain a little bit more about the vegetarian origins in nature. Is it because it was just hard to have and keep animals, or it was really out of the sense that, hey, we see that they are fellow sentient beings and we don't want to mess with that?
The original scriptures do not actually say anything about being vegetarian. Actually, it was okay to live in this forest by the river and walk in the mountains and eat. And largely the forest provided everything, they say. And there's still large communities that don't cultivate. They go in the forest and they eat what's available, they say. They say it always tastes good too. So it's forest, and they don't even farm in the forest, only what the forest gives them. That's how they lived originally. And if in some season the forest didn't give them, it was okay to kill whatever it is, an animal, and eat it. So the Sanatan term didn't actually say do not eat, especially with the Buddhism. And Buddhism actually, Buddha was in a Hindu home, and after his meditation, this whole business of ahimsa, non-violence, turned into kill nothing, because you are now not following the code of ahimsa. This is non-violence. So this non-violence is a really large word. It's not just about don't shoot with the gun or stab with a knife. Like I think raising your voice is violence. So it's similar to what Buddha felt like you can't kill anything. And the Jains were a step ahead. They would broom the ground they walked on unless they should step on an insect. So this not sort of part of that nonviolence of however people understand it, to eat meat in anywhere. It doesn't say.
I'm not sure what's brushing up against the microphone on your device there, but there's something that's
Okay,
maybe paper's brushing it or something, but it's making a noise.
I moved it.
Jane, do you have any questions? I see you're muted and you're with us.
What? I have a question.
Mary, you have a question first?
I do. A while ago, I visited a temple and with a group, and I don't proclaim to understand a third of what I was told, but at one point we were in a line and we were given food. If I remember, it was raisins and nuts, and some certain spices. What might that have been about?
They call it, the word used is prasad. It is like blessed by God. So in many Indian homes, as I said, people pray at home or in a temple. So when you cook, the first morsel of food is offered to God. It is like a Thanksgiving, so to say. This is funny. Some people don't, when they're cooking, like we check for salt and we taste it. There are people that don't taste it because the first morsel has to go to God. So their food can be without salt some days. But in the so people, the priests or the people who serve in temples prepare food and they offer it to God with their prayers first thing in the morning. And all those who come into the temple to pray thereafter are given a piece of this food. And it is usually nuts and wheat flour and ghee, which is purified butter, and sugar. So it is just an offering that this food has been blessed. You came here to pray. Here's your gift from God. So eat and be thankful. That's the ritual.
Could you tell us a little bit about the major festivals and the reason behind them?
Oh, no, just kidding. The list of festivals is very long. And they're not all religious. You know, the scriptures, as I said, the Vedas are the original scriptures of the Sanatan Dharma. Thereafter, there are Puranas, which are Upanishads, which are rituals for everything, rituals for birth and death and feeding the child, sending them to school, you know, whatever. They're just rituals. And then there are seasonal festivals. As 2 weeks ago, they have Lori, which it's the end of winter. And then there's, end of summer, so on and so on. And then there are these deities. So there's a goddess of, where I went to school, in high school, the goddess of learning is Saraswati. So they would have a day of prayer to the goddess of learning. Not that this goddess is a god, but it's just focusing on the fact that here we are, and learning and knowledge is important. So focus on this today. So that becomes Saraswati Puja was a big festival. The largest ones from the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which Ramayana is the story of Ram and Sita, which also is really a discourse on how to live life right, how to obey your teachers and your parents and do whatever it takes, and then victory of good over evil. So the festivals and these semi-religious entities are quite large. They're like maybe 25 more in a year, and they're all held in varying scales on where you are, and some are really local. And then there's that Kumbh Mela once a year. There's, you may have all seen it in recent years, 10, 12, 15 million people gather at the Ganges, where the river Ganges and Jamuna meet, and they pray, and they get in the water to wash away their sins, so to say. So there are, all I can think of is that 2,000 years will breed a lot of social customs. And they're
Yeah, yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about the significance of the river Ganges?
These rishis, as I say, these seers who were meditating were up in, I mean, this is all prehistoric. So it's, again, Shruti, what was heard. They lived in those mountains, and the river Ganges starts in the mountain over there. So somehow the knowledge that they attained in their meditation is associated with the birth of this river, and the birth of their knowledge are all kind of merged in this thinking that this is a holy river from which they attained this. They attained this knowledge really from the spirit, they say. As Radhakrishnan said, it's not this spiritual knowledge is not a matter of reading or hearing or being told. It is indeed from the spirit. And so the Ganges is merged up with the spirit because they were in that region. And from there comes down this river.
Yeah. My goodness. And India, of course, has more than just Hindus in it. There's currently kind of a Muslim grouping that.
Yes, this is very unfortunate. And what is happening today in India, they're using the word Hindutva, not Hinduism. That is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's a political movement. Mm-hmm. And for centuries, including after independence, all religions were good and everyone lived in peace. We lived with the Muslims side by side. We have their customs, they have ours, and you can't even tell us apart when we're in the same room. So, but our current government, unfortunately, like the world over, there are extremists on both sides. Just like we have our white supremacists who think they're better than everybody else, our current government with this, the party that they belong to, BJP, has been here since independence, but on a smaller scale. And right now they've taken this view that everyone that's on Indian soil, the Hindus have to have the loudest or only voice. But this is not Hinduism. This is an extreme political view that we're under, and it is very frightening, and it is not our truth, and it is not ahimsa, and it is not tolerance. And it's annoying that they use the word Hindutva because it gets a little confused with. Other than that, prior to this, as you say, there are Christians and a large number of Muslims and Zoroastrians, Africans, everybody lives in India, and they've lived in peace. They didn't go out and kill each other. They follow our customs, we follow theirs, and it's been okay. So this that's happening is really strictly political and very, very frightening.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the clock here, and I mean, you've answered every question that anybody could ever have about Hinduism. I want to thank you on behalf of folks gathered here. Certainly Jane's out there, and we're live streaming to Facebook also. So we don't know how many people are taking advantage of your wisdom, but thank you. And let's see, we will now, we're going to continue to keep the Zoom alive here, and we're going to continue with worship in about 15 minutes. So Chandra, thank you so much. Great to have you with us.
Bye, Chandra. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. Bye.